It is my second day in Austin, Texas. On last week's episode, I met with Blair White, the conservative trans political commentator and YouTuber.
Welcome to the home of the most hated trans woman on the planet. This is the gun room.
Oh my god.
Gender affirming care for minors, there's a pipeline. There's a step 1, a step 2, and step 3. Step 1, puberty blockers. Step 2, hormones. Step 3, surgery.
Today, it was time to sit down with someone with opposing viewpoints. I wanted to find somebody who was directly being affected by all the anti-LGBTQIA plus bills that are being passed in Texas. Then someone sent me this TikTok.
Century, and I will not stand for it. We will not stand for it. We may not win today, and we may not win tomorrow, but we will persist as we always have in the fight of your oppression. If you wish to eradicate transgenderism from the public life, as members of your party have said, to quote a hero of yours, you can pry that from my cold, dead hands.
The way she spoke resonated with me. The passion in her voice, it sent chills down my spine. I knew I needed to sit down with her to hear what life is looking like for her and her family while living in Texas during these times.
Hi, how are you?
Here, come on in.
Good, nice to meet you.
Yeah, same here, same here.
I feel like I've seen so much about you already. I've been doing my research a little bit. It's Loren, right?
It is, yeah.
Nice to meet you. Do you mind if I film you?
No, not at all.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Nice to meet you. I'll give you a little hug.
Welcome to the abode.
It's so nice in here.
Oh,
I love it.
Yeah.
Yes, it's so decorated.
I just moved in a couple of months ago, and so I'm still kind of getting it all sorted. You know, that's what all like the paint swatches are for. You know, it's like, do I want to live with this color?
I like it.
Kind of thing. I do. I really like it.
Does your kid live here too?
No, my kid lives with its mom.
Okay, got it.
And then spends time with me a few times a week.
Nice.
Yeah.
And does it like it here?
Oh yeah, very much.
Nice.
Yeah. I get to be the cool parent, which is really fun.
Yes. The fun
So,
parent.
Yeah, I'm the fun parent.
Yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying Austin so far. It's hot, but it's at least not like humid hot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not too bad.
Yeah. Oh, these are cute too.
Oh, thanks.
Yes.
I got this from like this little art cooperative in Germany.
What do you do for a job, if you don't mind me asking?
I do whatever pays me money. Right now, I'm also working like part-time in a warehouse. I'm helping somebody who's like got a startup like sandal making company.
Oh, cool.
So I'm helping him like make the sandals.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, like I'll literally do like, you know, there's no like traditional career path. It's just sort of like, oh, that seems like a fun thing to do. Let's do that.
Is it stressful because of like income, like not consistent income? You know, it's almost like you're just a freelancer, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, not really. Because the stuff is fairly consistent.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
It's
clearly, yeah. You're doing great.
I'm doing fine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my god, this actually looks great. Do you like how that looks?
That's perfect. I love it.
I actually like the lighting. It adds like an ambiance to it. I can't describe it.
Thank you for having me here. When I decided to come to Texas, I knew that I needed to find somebody that the bills are actively harming.
Sure.
Will you give me a quick like little description of what bills we're going through that were concerning the queer community?
Sure. So it started off back in February, and we started getting word of what was happening. And it was a real slow trickle, because at first it was like 20, 30, then it was like 40 anti-LGBTQ bills, and it just kept like piling on until mid-March, early March. We realized that there was like 140 separate pieces of anti-LGBTQ legislation, and some of it was very insidious. There was one, at this point, HB, SB, I don't know, it was 1209. It was basically going to take away insurance coverage for gender-affirming care for everybody.
So not just the children aspect.
Not just the children. No, it was starting to place like burdens and restrictions that would have made it like quote unquote fiscally irresponsible to the shareholders for insurance companies to continue to support this level of care because of the extra burden that was being placed on them by this law. And so a lot of us were like really worried about that. And then, of course, I mean, there were other ones. You know, there's the Don't Say Gay bills that went through. There's an all-out ban that happened on gender-affirming care for minors, which goes into effect on September 1st. Yeah, I mean, just literally coming at us from like all sorts of different angles.
Can we go back to your journey into your gender identity and your transness? Do you mind talking about that?
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to. I grew up in an extraordinarily religious family. Very early on, I'd like internalized that whatever I thought about myself was not a good thing, you know, and whatever I was needed to like ignore it and hide it and like move forward. When I was 15, I told my mom that I was attracted to men. and she kicked me out of the house. Kind of have the realization of like what my life's going to look like if I try to go through like living this. And so I put myself back in the closet and I go apologize to my parents. It was burying everything like super deep, you know? Cause I mean, I knew at 13, I knew. So I go back in the closet and I start living that like cis hetero Christian normative life. I go to college, I fall in love, I marry a girl, we have a kid, and it was really great. And honestly, like it really was.
Wait, sorry, just for clarity. So when you came out, you said you liked men, but then you fell in love with a woman?
Mm-hmm.
So was that a shock to you?
No, not at all. Yeah, I've always knew that I was bisexual. I guess, and it's really funny. I think, you know, in the post Tumblr years, you know, had I come out in 2018, I probably would have said like, oh yeah, I'm a pansexual. But it's whatever. I'm bi. That's fine.
So I guess in that way, it was a little easier for you to go back in the closet because you could still date girls, which is something you're attracted to as well.
Right. Absolutely.
So it's just like suppressing a certain facet of your sexuality.
Exactly.
So you fall in love with a woman, and at that point, you were still presenting as a man.
Yes, I was. She's an absolutely wonderful person. Was very open and accepting of me exploring things behind closed doors.
Like dressing up in women's clothes, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, wearing women's clothes, lingerie, things like that. For other reasons, our relationship really began to dissolve when my kiddo was about 6, and then we got divorced when it was 7. At that point, I fell really hard into alcohol. I had a heroin problem back when I was in my like late teens, and I kicked that, which was really great, but I didn't give up like literally anything else, which is probably what I should have done. And so I fell into like this alcoholic stupor for a few years, and was sleeping with other people, meeting people. Eventually I did have another partner for a few years, and it was in that relationship that I finally got sober and decided to come out.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
2 big changes in your life.
Yeah, massive changes, you know, and I think it was, one was the direct result of another. I didn't have substances to hide behind anymore or to quiet things. I mean, the most frightening thing for me has always been to spend time alone. That's why this move in particular has been really significant for me. This is the first time I've lived alone since I left the house.
Which is so crazy to me because you seem like such an independent person and you have this strength about you and this outspokenness about you. I'm surprised to hear that.
This is all very recently discovered. Yeah, I mean, this is what's come from me accepting fully who I am. When my kiddo was a little bit older, you know, I was like, hey, just so you know, like, I'm bisexual. I'm attracted to, you know, like men and women and everything in between. And I was like, okay, sure, you know, like old news. 6 months later, you know, was like, hey, like I'm non-binary. I want to use they, them pronouns. And I was like, cool, this is great. And then a few months later, it wanted to change its name. And then a few months later, it wanted to change its pronouns again. And then a few months later, it wanted to change its name again. So it went through the whole like really beautiful process of like watching this like this beautiful introspective soul like dig down deep and figure out and understand who it was.
So when you go to your child and you tell it, I'm now presenting as she, her, they, them, what did your child say?
Cool. It was so nonplussed by the whole thing that it was just like, yeah, I guess that makes sense.
That's so fascinating, and I love it because, I mean, I'm so accepting, but if my dad was to come to me and tell me I'm now going to transition to be a woman, I would just be so shocked. I don't know how I would handle it.
Sure.
Because just so many years of, that's my father, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think part of that is also, though, like, that's because your father is your father, you know? And I think probably the kiddo was, like, looking back at, like, me and what I did and who I was, and was like, yeah, that like, absolutely fits.
Does your child call you mom now?
No, my kiddo calls me Baba.
Cute.
Yeah, it's just a fun little word that just means me as a parent.
And did your ex-wife have any conversations with you about how you're going to approach this subject with your child or anything like that?
No, like explicit conversation. No, like, hey, let's sit down and talk about your transness kind of thing. But, I mean, we talk every other day at least. And so, stuff like that's going to normally come up and how we're going to do it and talk about it.
So its pronouns are it.
Yeah, so my kiddo uses, it, he, and they, but preferential in that order. So I always try to default to it, and then sometimes I'll use he.
What, I'm trying to find the right words. Like, how does somebody feel like it? What does that mean?
Sure, that's a great question. I think it in itself is accepting that you are other than what you see around you. I think that it's also in a degree like a failing of our language. The kiddo hasn't told me yet, but I'm 98% sure that this kiddo's gender void.
That means no gender.
No, that's agender.
Please educate me. I appreciate you educating me.
It gets really confusing really easily. Right, so having no gender is being agender, right? Like being asexual or aromantic, agender. Being gender void is where your gender is a void. It's a vast space of empty and nothingness, which sounds menacing and like vaguely nihilistic. But if you think about it in terms of like space is a void, right? So incredibly expansive and everywhere, but it's actually absolutely nothing. That's what gender void is.
Did your ex-wife, is she a cis woman? And
yeah, she's a cis woman.
How did that look for her with a child coming to her and saying, I want to use the pronouns it? Only because, I am a queer gay man, but I can't even understand. I mean, I'm learning now through you, but like that's a big thing to be able to grasp if your child's like, I want to start using it,
And no, and I think she does struggle with that, from time to time. And honestly, I struggle with it a little bit in the beginning as well, because for me, that's a very like dehumanizing thing to be called it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, because growing up, I read this book called A Child Called It, and it was about these parents who are abusive and they called their child it.
Right.
And now it's so interesting that we're in a time now where like people are choosing to label themselves as it.
Yeah, absolutely. It took me about a month, I think, to really kind of acclimate to it and be like, no, this is this kid's gender. This is what affirms it. This is what it means. Like, get that other baggage that I'm carrying that this kid is obviously not carrying, and it's unfair for me to like put that onto it.
Did you see its demeanor change once you started accepting its pronouns and using it? And
I mean, we saw its demeanor change like as soon as it came out, and was being affirmed in its identity, like period. The name change, a haircut, some clothes, like it was massive, like absolutely massive. The self-harm stopped, the relationships with friends like deepened. It was really, really spectacular to see.
So when it comes to child affirming care for it, but if it doesn't have a gender, what is the affirming care that you are looking to get?
I frame it in the terms of like defeminizing. We're looking at like stopping the menstrual cycle. I mean, that's basically where we're at right now.
With these bills being passed and the gender affirming care, being banned, how is that going to look for you and your family?
So we had a really long conversation about this. We had a lot of conversations about this. First conversation about this was protecting everything. So it was going through and making sure that our medical records couldn't be accessed by folks.
Because they can go in and see who your pediatrician is, who your dentist is, those kind of things?
So supposedly it's all protected under HIPAA. The Attorney General in Texas, Ken Paxton, well, I guess he's not the Attorney General anymore, is he? Sorry. He's been indicted on 3 felonies, and so that's what makes me laugh. But he has started investigations into several large hospital groups that are providing gender-affirming care and has made requests for records. Now, they're not supposed to give those records out, but there's paperwork that you can file that makes sure that somebody doesn't do it unintentionally. So it's like an extra layer of protection on top of HIPAA, because we don't want people to know what doctors we are not seeing, what kind of medicines we aren't taking, and all of that kind of stuff, because that can be really dangerous in the long run. A few years ago, CPS, it was Child and Family Protective Services here in Texas, was investigating families that had trans children who were being affirmed. And so they were opening case files into them. So we already have a whole stack of documents That's, letters from teachers, from doctors, from therapists saying that we clearly love our child and we're doing the right things for them and like blah, 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 blah. So, this is something that we've been combating already for a few years. With the investigation that Ken Paxton opened into Dell here in Austin.
Attorney General Ken Paxton's office is looking into a local hospital's practices surrounding gender transitioning procedure.
Attorney General Ken Paxton said there has been, quote, a number of recent reports about potentially illegal activity at Dell Children's, end quote. The staff at Dell Children's sent us a statement writing in part, quote, our organization prohibits surgery and prescribing hormone therapy for the treatment of gender dysphoria in children. Now, his office is also asking for a wide variety of data from the hospital, including policies surrounding puberty blockers, the identity of gender-affirming care counselors or treatment providers, the age range of children who receive treatment and counseling, and complaints from parents and patients. The hospital has 30 days to turn this information over to the AG's office.
Dell just kind of like chickened out and shut down the whole clinic. What that ended up doing is like everybody who was at that clinic lost all of their care. And it wasn't just a clinic for gender affirming care. That's the thing. It was an adolescent medicine center. Kids with eating disorders, kids with suicidality, kids with self-harm, like kids, like all sorts of things. And so like in that one fell swoop, like we lost everything. We lost all of the doctors, like overnight, via email.
So where do you go now? What doctors are, obviously don't say their names, but how are you going to get care for your child?
So that's what we've been exploring. So we're just having to seek other alternate routes to find pediatricians and the other doctors that the kiddo needs that are willing to still do some of the work that we need done. I know a lot of families are going out of state for care. And I know a lot of other families are moving. At this point, I know 9 families that have left Texas. And we talked about that. We did. Me and my ex-wife, we talked about like, okay, do we stay? Do we move? Minneapolis was like a really like enticing option. We've got a lot of friends there already. They're like a sanctuary state, so we'd be safe from like any kind of like extradition, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, like we both have like incredibly strong communities here. We think that we're going to be able to weather this with the support of our community until 18, and we can figure something else out. So the time limit that we've given ourselves right now is a year, as we're going to see how this year goes. Some things are going to change on September 1st, because that's when the law officially goes into effect.
So I won't be able to take any puberty blockers or whatever it is taking, right?
Yeah, that's when gender affirming care for minors has to stop medically. So no medicines, nothing like that.
So is that what's going to happen? It won't be able to take any medicine for its gender affirming care?
Here in Texas, yeah, that's exactly what will happen.
So you're thinking about finding a doctor outside of Texas that can get the medicine for it?
We're exploring some options. I don't want to talk about
you're totally
too much.
I'm just curious. I'm sorry.
No. The reason that I don't is again it goes back to those family protective services. It goes back to the Attorney General. There was a bill. I'm pretty sure it didn't pass. But there was a bill that was going to make it a felony to take a child out of state for gender affirming care. So that's already something that they're like looking at and like trying to suppress in some way. And I have no doubt we'll be coming back for it within, the next legislative cycle.
How old is?
He's 14.
And how has this affected?
Not much, which I think has been really good. Knows what's going on, and it is aware of all the laws that are coming through and the changes in the doctors and all of that kind of stuff, but still has its friends, still has like our community, still has like all of like the day-to-day stuff that makes his life is still there, and still there in a very positive way. As its parents, we are trying to take that burden off of it, you know? And so, like, let us worry and stress about where your doctor is and how we're going to find your medicine and, like, how we're going to pay for everything and yada, 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 yada. Like, that's on us. That's my job as a parent. Like, I don't want you to be worried or stressed. Baby, we've got this taken care of. Please trust that.
I know that we're going to get a lot of comments on the video, you know, with people that are against child affirming care because they think that, you know, it could just be a phase for your child and they're going to start taking medicine that's going to permanently alter their bodies. And what if they grow out of their phase? Like, what do you have to say to that?
I just have to say, like, I'm not even... Trust kids. Just trust them, right? Like, I think in a lot of people's minds, it's really easy to go through this process, you know, that like a 14-year-old can walk into a doctor's office and say, hey, chop my tits off. I want to be a man. And then it happens that afternoon. But like the reality is there's a lot of work that goes into confirming that this is the appropriate course of action. There's a year of psychotherapy. There's a slow introduction of medicines. Like, it's a very thought out process. Do you know how many people regret knee surgery? 30%. 30% of people who have surgery on their knees are like, yeah, that made my knee worse. Shouldn't have done that. Do you know those numbers for trans people? It's less than 1%. It's less than half of 1%. And my heart goes out to every person who's detransitioned. Like, it really does. And I'm so sorry that you went through that and you had to discover in this way. Based off of that less than 0.5% of people, to then take something away that's saving lives for thousands and tens of thousands of people seems ridiculous to me.
Well, thank you so much for doing this and opening your life to me. I know that, you know, it's tumultuous times and you're going through a lot with your family, and I really appreciate your honesty. I think that a lot of people are going to learn a lot. I know that I learned a lot through you, and sure, yeah. I really appreciate that.
It's my pleasure. You know, I like I said, I love talking about this stuff, you know, especially when it comes to, you know, smashing the state. So anytime.
Thank you very much.